Okay, let's talk about the Pit Droid. So this is Pit Droid Racer. What I'm not going to do is go through the drive builds, so the wheels and tracks and all that kind of stuff. They're covered off on the Brew and the Eggbot videos, fly-through videos. So I won't do through this. I just want to go through the main model for the speeder bike and the pit. So I'm going to just get rid of the Pit Droid sec, and we'll talk about the main frame. So the main frame is quite simple. You've got a base frame. And then you've got some other parts. I'll just get rid of some of the greebles that are on there so you can get a bit closer to looking at how the actual core build really is. So there we go. So really the main frame consists of three parts, which is this main frame at the bottom, and then these two upper skins. So if we remove the front skin and the rear skin, that's your main frame. Obviously it prints, this bit's on the bottom up, you've got bridging that goes across there, so it's all no supports. There's enough room in there to get a battery in and to get some of the electronics in there, and then effectively rather than having the metal bars through, I've now got printed frame with these which screw into the same places where the original brackets did. So it's a bit of simpler assembly, and then you've got two holes there and there just underneath the wings, and they're obviously for the drive cables to get them all into the centre bit. Front compartment for RC, and then battery will go through. And then effectively that's your main frame. So you can assemble your main frame and you can put your wheels on it, and then what you do then is you start to assemble the top half. Now the top half is made up of two skins, the front skin and the rear skin, as you can see. They are bolted together through these little holes here. They're just so you can get, well, what I tend to do is glue it, two-part epoxy, and then get some bolts, 3mm bolts through there with nuts on the other side, you know, sort of 10-15mm. I've also put a 15mm hole through there which wasn't on the beta files. That's so that you can run the servo cables from this front part into here. You will need some extended servo cables, because obviously it's just to get it all to the one part where your RC is. Now what I've also done on this one's got the servo mounts, and the servos, I don't know if you can just see there, but the servos just slot into them grooves, and the top tab goes into there. So in this model the front servos are not screwed in at all. What you do is you pop your two servos in, make sure they're in that little latch there, and then there is a servo mount which basically clicks in and locks that in place, and I can just show you very quickly how that kind of works. If I go to a bit of sectional analysis, is servo drops in, clips into there, the servo is closest to the top, and then that slots in. It's got a little groove again for that other part of the tab, and then it bolts in or self taps in from the top with an M3 screw, which holds those servos nice and tight. So that's just how that goes in. So you drop your two servos in. So obviously center your servos as always with a servo tester or whatever. Screw that in, and that will hold your servo in on both sides. The servos are for the main drive arms, so you get animation on the arms, and then these just bolt together. So that then creates your main frame. And then on top of the main frame, you've at the rear here, you've got a magnet and two locating pins, and that's for the rear jets. So the way the rear jets work is they have similar. What they've got is you've got a hole there which you glue in a 10mm diameter by 5mm deep magnet, and you also put in two little M3 screws in through there, long ones. And what they actually do is they stick out. They just stick out, and then on the rear skin, what you've actually got is you have two little holes here and here that they'll drop into. Not designed to screw into there; they're just designed to sit into there. So with these magnets, so you can actually pull the rear jets off, or if they catch on anything, they'll just pop off, and you just stick them back on with the magnet. Because they're printed in this orientation, this plate here is a bridge. It'll look pretty messy, don't worry about that. What we've got is we've got a greeble then that sits over the top of it. So the greeble sits over top of it, you screw it in there, and it just tidies that back up and gives you a nice kind of finish at the end. So but as I said, the rear greeble and the jets will come off and on. Okay. So once you've done that, you put your magnets in, you bolted it all together. That's pretty much your lower frame completed. 2 servos in either side, and then you've got the drive arms. Now just talk through the drive arms. So the drive arms are actually at an angle. So if you look at it from the front, they're not straight. They print with these bits here flat, but the little groove for the servo is actually an angle. So if you look at how that servo horn is actually connected, let's just get rid of the magnet so you can see the servo or horn doesn't sit straight, it sits like that. 2-part epoxy, glue it in and make sure that hole there is centered, and then the reason for that is it gives it a better angle for the hinges for the arms. It just looks a bit better with it not being kind of completely straight. So both of those go on, glue them on, center the servos and pop them on. You can at this point I wouldn't put the screws in until you've got the driver on, so that you know the pit droid, so you can actually make sure you get that right or not. Single screw through there which holds that bracket in. I haven't done, but I will do a plate that covers over here that's got like you know, a little bit of a console on, just to tidy that up. I've not done that yet, but hey. And then your rear skins pop on there by magnets, and then effectively that screws into here with 2 holes there, and then there's a little bit on the front one. So those 2 screws there also hold the pit droid's feet. So I'll talk through that when we get to the pit droid. At the front we have the vents. Now the vents is again 2-part print. This one prints with this here bit to the base, and then that just clicks on and you can glue that into place. It holds in place with 2 screws, one there and one there. They both self-tap into that plastic, and then when you put the main frame on, you can see that can also screw in there. So this top bit is held on with 1 screw at the front which holds this piece here on once this is all assembled, a screw there and a screw there which go through the pit droid seat, and that's it really. So if you want to get it off, it's fairly easy to take off if you need to. You've then got obviously that rear greeble I mentioned, and then the only other part really is the seat. At this stage, don't attach it to your main frame. You wait until you've kind of assembled it. So when you've done your main assembly, your rear jets will be on via magnets, and it'll go onto the main frame. So really, you want to just assemble this piece like this. Then you can then start to work on the pit droid. Okay, so I'll talk through the pit droid. So here's the little fellow. Let me just first of all remove this speeder skin, and I'll talk through how he's made up. Start with the easy parts first. The arms. You've got 2 arms. These are from the great model from Dave Moog, who effectively gave me the model to play with. I've altered the sizes and scales, and I've tweaked it and changed it, so it's not the same model as Dave's at all really, but it's effectively he's provided the kind of core layout and design for that, which is fantastic. So these arms print flat on here, single bolts through from the inside to create this hinge. You want these arms to be loose and floppy, and then you've got a second arm comes up to there, and this arm bolts on to here. I think it's about a 25mm bolt that goes through there, and these shoulder hubs are loose. All this is loose, it's just held together with bolts. You don't need to glue anything on there. So that's the arms. The arms are fairly simple, and the arms can be attached at any time. So I'm just gonna remove the arms for a second, you monster. Let's get rid of the shoulder hubs, and now I want to talk. We'll go through the legs, which is the other easy bit really. The legs are one piece, so as you can see they're printed like this. You couldn't bend the articulated pit droid like this because it would clash into each other, but what we've done is just done that as a single print for you. And then you've got some little hips, again similar to the legs. You don't have to actually tighten these on hugely. These won't move anyway, so you can put a bolt straight the way through there, get it nice and tight, and then effectively that's your legs. But the assembly, your legs you put on last really. So when you're assembling this, leave your hip and legs off, and I'll show you that why when we actually come to put in that. In fact, I can probably show you now. So I'll show you how this fits onto the speeder skin. So the way that the pit droid fits on is, as you can see, there's two little screws, one there, two bolts. These are M3 bolts. They go through the feet, they go through this frame, and then they self-tap into that main frame. So effectively it holds his feet on, onto there, right the way through. The feet are on solid. That's how the feet are held on. The main body, once you've assembled this, and we'll talk through this assembly, your assembly is held on, just remove the pit droid, there we go, is held on with 3 bolts in the seat. 1, 2, 3, and these go right through from underneath. You can't see the holes there because I've put a very thin layer on to stop the bridging, but you have 3 bolts that go through the seat, and they screw into the base of that pit droid, because that's a pretty small area to hold that pit droid up. So you've got some chunky old screws that go right the way through there to hold this on. So that part screws on first, then your feet screw on, and at that point then what you can start to do is attach the legs, which bolt into there and then bolt from the outside of the feet on. Again, M3 self-tappers, as most of my builds use at the moment. So, and then once you've got legs on, your legs kind of sit like that. The legs also give a bit of extra stability to the body. So that's how the legs go on. Right, now let me just talk you through the actual body of the pit droid, because all these, they're almost like greebles, the arms and the legs. They're fairly easy to pill together, but we'll talk through the main bit. So I'm not going to, I'll just take his head off, because again his head just bolts on, so let me just take his head off for the time being, and I'll talk with how this is actually assembled. So this is the main mechanism. You've probably seen the videos. His head turns left to right, and it goes and it nods, and it goes up and down. So this is how this main mechanism works. So before we start to look at how that's put together, I'll just show you so you can get a visualization of how the mechanism is by just taking a bit of a cross section. So oops, not that much of a cross section though, mind you. Where's the? Let's bear with. All right, there we go. Let's pull that back to there to get about halfway through that neck. There we go. Okay, so what you've actually got here is you have, if you can see, there's a servo in the bottom. The servo has a gear attached to it, and that's probably not the easiest way. Let me have a look at another way of, let's see if we can see this a bit clearer. Let's try that. There we go. Yeah, so if we look into the body, what you've got is you've got a servo, which you can see there. Go. On top of the servo is a gear, and the gear meshes into another gear. And this gear is actually part of the neck. So if I continue the neck up, there we go. You can see then that the neck goes in. So the way this kind of works, if I just remove a couple of panels. The way it works is servo in the bottom, gear, and a neck. So that effectively allows you to turn the head left and right like that. Then what you've got in this top bit is you've got another bracket here for another servo. So you've got a servo that goes into there, and you glue a servo horn in there. You also put a bolt through this hole into there, so that then creates the hinge that allows you to, if I can do it, nod the head in as well. So that's how the head turns round and nods. 2 servos, one to do the nod and the other one to do the head turn that's in there. The way we assemble this is the actual body comes in 2 parts. So there's a lower body here and an upper body there. Okay, so the first thing that we do is we put in the just get rid of some parts so I can see how we assemble this. So the first thing you do is you just drop your servo into there, as you would do. The servo itself consists of, it's an MG90 servo. It drops into there and it screws in through those 2 holes. The the cable for the servo, just in that, there we go. So the cable for the servo, which comes out of this side here, if you can see, will slot underneath this little gap, and then what you've actually got in the body is you've got a little channel at the bottom here, a little hole. So what you need to do then is just drop the servo cable through that little hole. So the way you do is pop your servo cable through the hole. Once you pop your servo cable through the hole, pop your servo in, 2 screws, tighten it up, and you should have a cable dangling out of here. Okay, now the next thing to do is to get a length of servo cable, good length of servo cable, because you'll need a second servo cable for the head. And what you do is you thread that through that hole along with the connector for this one. So what you end up with is 2 cables. You end up with the actual servo cable, and then just a length of servo cable not attached to anything, just a length of cable going through there, which is going to be connected to your upper head. Then and I'll show you how the lower part fits on. So the lower part fits on with 2 bolts, which they're self-tapping, and that holds it in. And then you've also got a hole here for an M3 set screw, so a 3mm set screw or grub screw, which is 10mm long, and effectively that holds that body together with 2-part epoxy. So 2-part epoxy, you glue it, and you can get that fitted in near enough straight away. Before you do that, what you want to do is thread the cable. So you'll see there's another hole in the body here. Now, if this is tight, you can sometimes get a needle file just to get file through there. There's some overhangs in there that may just mean that when you push the servo cable through, it's not completely smooth. But push your servo cable with an end, i.e. the servo cable that does this servo here, right the way through, so it comes out and it'll stick out through here. Then it'll come out through this hole and out. Then what you do is you take that servo cable and you push it back in again down this second hole, so it comes out here. So you end up with the cable gone right the way through, bending down and actually coming out that bottom there. And then the second cable, which is just a cable, just a 3/4 servo cable, not without any ends on it or without cable on it, goes the same route. So it goes straight down, out, back in, round, and out that bottom. So effectively, once you've then got the main pit body on, you've got a cable that goes. The 2 cables come right out at the bottom there. They bend round there. You'll probably see them through that little window. They'll fit between that hole there and that gap there, and then they'll come out into this space here. One will connect to this cable so that you can turn the head. The other one will use. I'll show you where that routes in a second. So once you've got the cable sorted out, the next thing you can do is put the gear on. So we can put the net gear onto the servo. Again, simply, it's got a little groove on the bottom, and you can glue in a servo hub, a servo horn onto there. Once you've got the servo horn in, make sure the servo centered and angle it like that. So what you want is kind of the gear pointing straight towards that little hole there in the middle. And then what we can do then is grab the neck. So the neck goes in. What the neck does is it drops into there and it meshes, as you can see, with that gear. Again, make sure you get your servo angle like that. So you want these 2 holes here actually on the neck aligned to those 2 holes in the body, and that's your servo neck in. Now before you put the servo neck in, we've got some cabling to do, and the cabling on this is what we're trying to do is get the cable to come out at the top there so we can use that to control the nod servo. So I'll talk through how that cable goes. Okay, I'll just show you how the assembly goes. So we've got 3 parts assembly to this. We've got the neck, we have find the parts that I need, we have the shoulder cover, there we go, and then once we've got the shoulder cover, we've also got the shoulder. So there you go. So the way that this works, we've got a happy smiley face, look, it's good, isn't it? So the cable that's from the bottom comes out of this hole here. Doesn't need to be threaded through this because this is an open hole. So what you're doing is you're pulling the cable out of here, and then it goes back in through the smiley face. And the smiley face is really designed that you can push the cable through and it'll allow the head to turn, and it sort of drags the cable around. So if you can imagine, up out through here, back in looped through there. Once it's looped in under there, you'll see there's a little hole at the bottom of that gear. It pushes into that hole and then it spins and it goes right the way up and comes out of here. Okay, so there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can feed it through there first from the top out through there, put it through that shoulder plate through this, so push it back up through here and then drop it back down and thread it all the way through so it comes out the bottom. But that's the length of the cable, so through there, all the way through the body, into that space, out through this hole, back down through that hole, into the hole in the neck, and out the top of the neck. And what you'll end up with is you'll end up with a little loop of cable that goes kind of like that. Now there's quite wide grooves on there, so the whole cable doesn't shift left and right when you turn. It's just to give it as much space as possible. But what you want to do is make it so that attach a servo tester to that head turn servo. Make sure that head turn servo turns relatively freely with that cable on, because what you're then going to do is this shoulder cover bolts in with 2 bolts there and there, and 3 bolts self tap. And then finally you've got a shoulder cover that goes over that. Now the shoulder cover, if we look there, as you can see, the shoulder cover's got this gap so that it allows the cable to come out of here back in there. There's not a lot of room, you've just got to kind of make sure that you've got enough space there for it to be moved relatively freely. I built a couple of them, it does fit, it's just sort of playing around with it just to make sure that you've got enough movement for the servo, etc. So, and then you've got a cable that comes out of there, and then finally you've got one more self-tapping screw that holds this shoulder in place. So the body is a little bit of a complex build, but you know that's what we've got to do to get the animation working. Once you're happy with that, there's another bolt that just goes in here, and what that does is it bolts through there and it bolts into the neck. Now that's like a hinge, okay, so or a pivot should I say. So what you really want to do is tighten it up so that the neck gets in there and it's tight, and then loosen it back a couple of turns so that the head can turn, so that the neck can turn left and right, but it's not rattling up and down. So you want it to be loose but not completely loose, and you can put a little bit of grease in there, a little bit of oil in there, whatever you want to do to try and free it up and make it a little bit smoother. It won't wear away, and to be honest, there's not a lot of movement in there, so it works pretty well. Once you've done that, bolt that shoulder place on. Obviously you paint all these before you do this, it makes it a lot easier. Bolt through there, and that's pretty much then your body and your 2 body and assemblies. And that's the more complex part of the build, because then the next thing that you would do then is we'll start to put on the top part of the head. So the way the top part of the head works is, first of all, there's a head plate which bolts onto this neck. Now the cable for the servo comes out of this hole here, and there's a little bit of a groove here so that the cable can come out here. Now ideally you don't want a lot of cable on there, so what we're going to do then is you're going to crimp a servo connector on the end of that, a male connector because it's going into the servo pin, and then once you've crimped that on, or you can use an existing one, cut it off and solder it, however you want to attach it. What you do then is you pop your servo in. I actually cut the cables off the servo, shortened them quite considerably because I didn't need that length of cable, and it's all tucked away in the head. So put the little MG90 servo, it screws onto here. Actually, I don't think I've got a servo in this model to show you how it fits, but it screws onto there, and effectively then what you've then got is the lower part of the actual head. And so the way that it works, your servo drops into here, your servo horn glues into there. So what you do is you glue your servo horn into that, facing down, trim off the end so it's a bit neat, drop your servo in to there, screw it into there and there, you've got your cable from the bottom coming out through there, you've got your cable from your servo which will come out through here, and then what you really do is grab the two, connect them, and then you've got some holes at the top there which lets you use zip ties just to secure those cables. But try and, I trimmed back quite a bit of the cable and put new connectors on just so I didn't have too much cable kicking around. So servo horn in there, and then once you've done that, pop it in, screw your servo horn in, and then what you do is you put a self-tapping screw that goes through there and just rests into that hole there, which gives you your pivot then for your head to move. And that's your head assembled and connected. At that point then you can connect it up to a RC or to a servo tester and make sure that your head nods and it turns before you start to add the rest of the assembly. Now then, the next bit we'll kind of look at is a dome. So the dome fits on top like that. It's really simple, it just bolts in two places, which is there and there. With the servo you've got a lot of nod movement, so you can nod the head up to put one screw in and then nod the head down to put the other screw in and tighten those in. You'll see what I've done is tried to simplify the print as much as possible, so the whole thing prints in two prints, and then what you end up with is this little, which looks like the model's moved a little bit offset, but we'll move across a bit, just make him neaten him up a bit while we're here. Might as well. Do it by hand. There we go. Anyway, yeah. So what you've got at the front then is you've got this little diamond. So you'll screw in nice and tight through those little holes. You've got a diamond in the front, and then the actual eye goes in like that. There we go. So that just pops onto the front of the dome. How do you fit it on? Originally I thought you can glue that on, but actually that gives you limited access to the servo. So what I ended up doing mine is I just put a tiny bit of blue tack into here and pushed it on, and it holds incredibly strongly, but it does mean that if I need to I can just pull it off to get access to the head again. You've also got two holes here which are a 4mm diameter holes, which allow you, if you want to put aerials. So you can, I haven't put any printed aerials because 4mm is quite small, but what you can do is you can use filament rods. There's quite a few different things that you could use if you wanted to put the two aerials off the back of the pit droid, or you could just leave him as is. It's pretty cool. And then that's pretty much your assembly for your pit. So as I said, what you then do is you pop all of the arms on. The arms will just flop around like some gorilla, and then you pop him onto the speeder bike like that. Bolt him on with those bolts underneath. You'll see that there's also a groove in the seat that goes right the way through to here for the servos. So you'll have two servos come through there. You want ends obviously on both of them, and then you run the servo cables through that hole, and in this area you can pretty much fit your RC, your two servo cables that will come out of the two ones for the two arms. So you've got 4 servos in total, and it goes like that. Now on the other droids, what I've done is I split the signal which went from the drive servos. I split the signal cable and use that signal cable to power the control arms, which are these two. So what you end up doing is these will perfectly match what you're doing on the drive one. What I did with mine on this is I actually run on the servo controller, I run these on channels 5 and 6. I run the head nod on 3 and 4, and then the drive on 1 and 2. The reason I did that is I wanted to control a little bit more the actual distance that these go. I was experimenting to see if you could segment them, which you can do. So the way it works now is a little bit complex, but I've got a mixer. I've got a speed controller that does the tank mix for you. So the speed controller takes 2 signals, which is left, right and forward, back, and effectively it mixes it into the 2 channels. So therefore I've not got to use the mixing that's on the RC. And what I did do then is I used the 2-channel mixing to mix the channels 1 and channel 2 to these levers 5 and 6, which give me a bit more control as to how far they actually went. It also means that just using the little spinny knobs on the RC controller, I can actually control these independently, so you can do little pre-flight checks before he shoots off. So it's a neat way of doing it. You can of course split the signal like you did on the other ones. Both kind of work. So just a little bit to talk through how the RC part fits together. So yeah, so once he's fitted on, you've got your 4 signals, you've got your RC gear in there. And then effectively you've got your rear jets, which will just fit on by a magnet, and you've got the main frame that fits in there. The reason these come off is it gives you, if you pull off the rear jets, you can get access to the battery hole. So if you've got a switch in there, or you want to just disconnect the battery and whatnot, you can do if you've got the right length cable. And then you pop that back on, and then pretty much that then just what's the next thing to do once you've got this top bit is you stick it on the frame and you've bolted in the 2 feet. So the 2 feet bolt straight the way through and hold the frame in, and then finally you've got your legs and the hips. Now what you can do, well, what I've got on here is I've got these bolts that go through to hold them legs. Actually, with these ones that are in the hip, these legs are fairly tight, so what you can do is push the legs into position and not put a bolt through there, which is pretty much what I did. The reason that's useful is that these legs will actually just spin round out of the way. So and I'll show you what I mean by that. So your legs will actually kind of move. You can grab hold of your legs and you can move them like that, and then it allows you to get a screwdriver in there to remove that top frame off. So you can you can literally have it fully assembled and just spin your legs back to take this top frame off if you need to get access to your RC control or anything like that. But yeah, screw 2 bolts into there, and then pretty much that's your assembly. You've then got, you know, all of the usual battery in the middle, RC controller, the 6 volts or the 5 volts out of the speed controller powers all of the servos, and on mine of course you can add a UBEC if you wanted to, which is another little power supply, power converter for the 6 volts if it's not kind of managing to run at the same speed. And all in all, folks, that's pretty much it. So hopefully that was a useful overview for the for this little pit droid racer. Is a cool little thing. Nice little model, one of my favourites I think up to now, and got lots of personality when he's whizzing around, and he does off-road extremely well. Hopefully that was useful. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and because I do keep releasing lots and lots and lots of these, and I'll share some more cool stuff in a bit. Cheers.